I'm really enjoying zombies, and I got to a point where so many people are putting out this false information about this is the best gun, this is the best gun, and they don't actually do any testing. They're using legendary pack 3 on basic mobs, and it's like, that doesn't cut it, bro. We need the truth. I went in, decided to test it out for myself. What I did is I went to the tier 2 area with the gray unpacked weapons. And I am aware that when you pack weapons, it does modify them in a way, which we'll cover. But I want to give you a quick breakdown of the methodology. So we go through here. You can see I shoot the zombie in the body, and we can see the health bar. Regardless of how far the zombie is away, the health bar is always the exact same length. So we can go over here. I can go ahead and drag this across. We can figure out the health bar from the gray portion all the way over here, this entire part, including the red. And on the bottom here, I can't highlight it, but it comes up to 187 pixels wide. So what we can do is look at here. We know that, oh, boom, one body shot took 19 pixels, and we convert that to a %. And then we can kind of figure out how much damage something does to tier 1 zombies, tier 2, and inevitably tier 3 to kind of see what's going on. We can do the headshot and figure out all the different values. On top of this, I was able to figure out exactly how much Pack-a-Punch is helping out and the different rarity of weapons. So that's a little bit on how the sausage is made. Now let's get into the actual sausage of the video. We have a long list of all these different various weapon values for the damage to the limb, damage to the chest, and then damage to the head. 99% of the time, it will do the same to the limbs as it does to the chest, regardless. But the headshot gets significant improvement where it could be a 2.6 times multiplier, a 3, a 4, a 5. And obviously, since this is hand tested with zombies, there is a little bit of margin for error, but it is a margin of error of 1 pixel. So not a huge difference. And we've also factored in the weapons that have these issues where the Lockwood 680, if you put in slugs, it's only going to fire 1 shot. As soon as you Pack-a-Punch it, it'll make it 10 slugs. Which is ridiculous. That's currently bugged. Will probably get fixed. M16 makes it full auto. You got to factor in that. TAC-M makes it a burst weapon instead of a semi-auto. The DG and the FR, it adds a shot to the burst. So instead of a 3-round burst, it gets a 4-round burst. Lockman Shroud, instead of a 3-round, it goes to a 4-round as well. Maybe even 5. And then we were able to figure out a bunch of values. The main thing to pay attention to is a base weapon is a 1X. If you pack it once, it will actually just double your value, which is something we assumed and I covered previously, but now I have definitive testing that proves this. Pack 2 will double that value, and Pack 3 will double that value. So it goes from 2X, 4X, 8X, and this is gray base version of it. Tool, it does add 50%, like it says. It is actually a 1.5X. I shot it, equipped it, shot it again, an extra 50% damage. I tested this also for the rare, the epic, and the legendary tool, as well as combining the various combinations to make sure that the math added up. So the highest multiple you can get to the body is a 32X. The reason why I say to the body is because you can actually double this number with Deadshot Daiquiri. In addition to locking on essentially to the head for aim assisters, it'll actually also double the damage done to the crit. So you can actually get this up to a 64 multiple because you times in by that by 2. If you have a legendary pack 3 with Deadshot Daiquiri, you're going to get massive damage to the crit spot. And that could be insane for some of these weapons when we're focusing on the headshot DPS. In addition to that, I tested bullet penetration attachments. They didn't add any noticeable difference. It appears they don't work. The reason why I mentioned this is you could assume they wouldn't work, but it's worth testing so you're not wasting an attachment on those. And then I also figured out if the tier 1, let's say it has 100 health, because it's imaginary, we don't have damage values pop up. Tier 2 is 8 times as much health, so 800. And tier 3 is 6 to 7 times stronger than that. That's why I did a 6.5 here, and you end up with 5,200. So if a tier 1 has 100 health, a tier 3 has 5,200 health. Big difference in damage values. That's why the guns feel like trash if they're not triple packed with a high rarity and Deadshot Daiquiri. So before we get too deep into the rankings, I appreciate if you guys could hit the like button at this point and subscribe if you're interested in finding your way back to the channel and would like to see more zombies content on the channel in addition to the Warzone stuff. So we did a lot of testing. As you can see, we were able to find the limb, the chest, and the headshot. Combine that with the RPM, that's how you figure out the DPS. one thing we'll point out here is the ranking is ranked by the crit damage. So, and one of the things I did want to point out is the Tonfa, a melee weapon. This is the main one because I knew this one was like one of the most broken melee weapons. It is super high on the list, but its crit can't be doubled. But it doesn't really need to because we'll talk a little bit about it. So number one on the list is this Lockwood 680 in terms of pure raw DPS, factoring in this slug that fires 10. I did the multiplier. You don't have to really worry about that part. Lockwood 680, that firing 10 slugs at once. And this is how we're getting this value because obviously when you pack a punch, you're going to get that. You're not going to go into tier 3 with the gray weapon to actually try and do DPS. You're going to pack a punch it, right? So we're just trying to figure out the max DPS that we could get. And then obviously you would multiply this number by that 64 if you're getting a headshot crit. That one is insanely broken. I think that one, like I said, will get patched. So I would try to utilize that one if you want to have fun to mix it up. It's a great option, completely broken. Probably the guns in the top like 15 to 20 are all very good options. I think a lot of people really like the SVA. They leaned into that one really early on. So maybe up to around 22 is kind of where the cutoff is of like guns. And not like it's a drastic cutoff because you can see the DPS goes from 113 down to 112. Not a huge difference. It's just a steady decline over time. And there's a lot of different factors. It depends on the content that you're going to be doing. If you're going to go into the dark ether, maybe you want a gun that's a little bit hard hitting to take on elites and specials and things like that. There's certain guns that'll do better at that. And maybe you're going to fight the red worm, or maybe you're going to do Act 4 and fight the regular worm, or whatever the case is. There's certain guns that may be better for that. So I'll touch on those as we go through. Tonfa, I kind of had to do some weird backwards math to figure out the numbers on this because the Tonfa, gray, unpacked, anything, you can actually go into the tier 2 zone and 3-hit melee any zombie, even if they have armor. Not the elites or specials or anything, but the normal zombies that just walking around because of how broken the damage multiplier is for the 3rd hit. If you guys weren't aware of this, even in multiplayer and even in Warzone, if you manage to get a 3-hit, the 3rd hit does insane multiplier, which essentially used to do an insta kill. So some people that were really good with like the riot shield, they would do like 2 fake hits and then they would hit you with the 3rd and it would insta kill you and you'd be like, what the heck happened? It's like a super melee. Zombies, this stuff carries over. With the Tonfa, the first 2 hits, for example, do about 75 damage. Factoring in that to health, you know, that's pretty solid. You take about 75% of the health bar when it comes to a tier 1 zombie. When it comes to a tier 3 zombie, you're not doing much. 2 hits, that's barely 150. Almost nothing. But that 3rd crit hit is going to do like 3,700 damage. So you're wiping out like a lot of zombies in 1 hit if you could actually channel that in. And it'll do like 75% of the health of a tier 3 zombie, gray, unpacked. So it has that deadly power. And I'm sure if you've used the Tonfa, or maybe you haven't, when you're taking out certain elites, it's like no health move, delete it. It's like, holy. So that one is incredibly broken, and that is how it works. You have to get that 3rd hit, which is that super melee. Kimbo tiers, that one's been really popular for a while. Obviously, they had to nerf it in Warzone, but these damage values are independent of Warzone, independent of multiplayer. They have their own patch notes, and they will get balanced independently of those 2 games. So if you see this gun was nerfed, it's not going to impact zombies unless it's in the zombies patch notes. So these ones are still incredibly broken and offer a lot of versatility in destroying big elites because the bullet penetration is very good. So a Kimbo tier with the rapid fire and snake shots, which you have to use armory unlock to get the snake shots, it puts out high DPS, 500 DPS. We got the tier rapid fire. So the single one, still pretty solid, but obviously you're only going to have 5 bullets, so it doesn't really work. At least the other one, you have 10. You can do a quick reload. We got the Basilisk, which as your magnums are balanced super crazy to have a high damage to the head. And then we got the Jack Core 45. Anything that says the Jack on the list, this is just like a modification kit or an aftermarket part or something like that. It just keeps it easier. Even if it's not named that, I just know when I put Jack there, we know what we're talking about. There's only one, at least until they add multiple attachments for this. So this is the one that has the binary trigger, fires insanely fast, and the RPM is what's pushing this headshot DPS. But pistols, SMGs don't have as much bullet penetration as maybe an LMG. So maybe you got to kind of switch it up. Very good gun, single. And then one that will probably surprise you, and that's why it's so good to test things like this, is everyone was using the Swarm in Akimbo. But if you look at the Akimbo, it actually lowers the fire rate, and you end up with a rate of fire, combining them both, of right around 1300, which is cool. But it also, you can see here, it does less damage at 6.42. It's an arbitrary percent of health of a tier 2 zombie. But you can see that the WSP Swarm single still has 1100 RPM because that's its base RPM. And then it does more damage and you're more likely to hit the crit. But you're only going to have a 100 round mag instead of 200 round mags. So you can kind of trade off. I think the Akimbo Swarm is probably the best weapon for any worm fight, and it's good for pretty much all the content in the game. The WSP Swarm might be better for elites, might be better for like hitting a specific crit spot at a little bit further range. Maybe you want to hit the Mega Bomb, but you can see that the damage is crazy for this top half, and then you can see everything's kind of touching at that point. So you can kind of use the list at your own leisure, what you want to try out. If you want to use an LMG, the LSW is up there. It's probably the kind of cutoff where things start to feel a little bit weaker. The Fennec is great, but it has a 45 round mag. Even when it's doubled, not great. You bleed through bullets. The 1100 RPM is really what's helping it out. SVA, it got really popularized early on because people like Noah J or Delic JD use those, and they are great. It is a great rifle, and you can see it's pretty high on the list when you factor that there's no really other rifles on the list. The longbow is kind of an interesting gun because when you pack it, it turns into a 2-round burst that you can hold. So it goes boom, 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 boom. And I factored that into the fire rate, and it ends up being pretty solid. One that a lot of people were gassing up, and I saw, it just didn't do well when I put the testing to the test, right? The XRK Stalker is a really terrible gun. What it will do is when you do legendary triple packet with Deadshot Daiquiri, you're going to see chunks of your shot. But because it has a really slow fire rate of 75 RPM, it's not going to be putting out damage nearly as fast as a gun that maybe is taking little bits, but it's taking little bits super fast. So that's why it's good to see things in the bigger picture and kind of see where there is. I have tested 70 different weapons. I'm going to zoom out so you guys can get maybe a screenshot. By far the worst guns, and I don't recommend anyone ever using these, are the Lockwood 300s from MWIII. There's still a few I have to test out of the 100 or so different ones. Like I said, there's different variations that I've considered, but you can kind of see the list here. So reality is you can use really whatever you want, but this at least gives you a standpoint of, ooh, I didn't consider trying out the WSP9. That thing is kind of nutty when you get a headshot. Or the BAS-B, or the M13B, or the Rarity with the full auto. It's a pretty good option as well. And I thought I'd include a couple best practices. Generally, if you're playing zombies, you do care a little bit more about mobility and aim down sight speed. So I kind of generally focus around that and having a big mag, because most likely in like the vast majority of scenarios, if you have a 100 round mag and you pack a punch it, it'll turn into a 200. PDSW obviously doesn't fall in line with that. It goes from a 50 to a 400. I don't know how that works or the logic in that, but it does. So you can kind of put on a laser, and in this case, you can use an attachment that I would never use in multi because the laser is visible and it gives away your position. This one you can actually utilize to help speed this up if it's slow. You can use an optic or no optic because aim assist will lock on. If you're in keyboard and mouse, maybe optic obviously will help. You can use an underbarrel if you want to help speed up the gun. The XRK Edge BW4 is a great way to go. And the Kimura RYN is great if you want to reduce the recoil. It's probably one of the best attachments for that without hurting your ADS speed too much. So hopefully this helps you out. If there's any sleepers you think should have made the list that weren't on the top there, let me know in the comments. I'll go ahead and try them out if I missed them. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.